Welcome back to another retro game review. This time I'm looking at a game that most people are probably familiar with, or at the very least have heard of. It's Gradius, a horizontal shoot-'em-up from Konami. In the days before Silent Hill, Metal Gear Solid, and DDR, this was one of Konami's flagship series alongside Contra and Castlevania. Gradius would have 5 main titles, as well as numerous side games on pretty much every console and computer not made by Sega. Gradius would first appear in the arcades in 1985 in both Japan and internationally, although it was renamed Nemesis outside of Japan. Gradius would later be ported to many video game consoles and home computers starting in 1986. You can find versions of this game on the Nintendo Famicom and NES, Game Boy, Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64, MSX, ZX Spectrum, Sharp X68000, Sony PlayStation, Sega Saturn, the NEC PC Engine, iOS and Android, Sony PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Steam, and the Nintendo Switch. The game would spawn numerous sequels, with the final entry Gradius 5 on the PlayStation 2. There were also several spin-off series and games. The Salamander and Life Force games would feature the same player characters, Vic Viper, and the second player, Lord British, fighting organic aliens that consume entire solar systems. The Parodius series is a cute-'em-up series featuring parodies of Konami's characters. In the Xbox 360 era, Konami released 2 games in the Automedius series, a failed successor series featuring well-endowed girls representing various Konami ships. There are also many Konami games featuring the Vic Viper spaceship, or other characters from the Gradius series including Konami YY World 1 and 2, Moai-kun, Konami Crazy Racers, and Monster Maulers. Gradius Easter eggs even appear in other games like Castlevania Order of Ecclesia, Metal Gear Solid, Animaniacs, and Vandal Hearts 2, just to name a few games. Today I'm going to cover the PC Engine version. Sadly, like every Konami game for the PC Engine, none of them were released on the Turbografx 16 internationally. That's really a shame because the Turbografx really needed some of Konami's great releases at that time. Luckily, this game was made available on the PC Engine and Turbografx 16 mini consoles, so not only can you play the game on a modern television, but you have some extra conveniences like save states to help you learn the game. This is a very good version, and in my opinion, the best port at the time. It was released in 1991, pretty late since Gradius 2 was already on the Famicom, and Gradius 3 was already released on the Super Nintendo. The only better versions are the Arcade Perfect ports on the newer consoles, starting with the Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn. Not only is this a pretty accurate arcade port, but it includes extra content and many enhancements over the arcade. Sadly, there's one thing that really hurts this version and keeps it from being a definitive port of Gradius. I'll talk about that first, since it's a big negative for this game, and it's the slowdown. This was Konami's first PC Engine game, and it's very obvious they didn't have a good handle on the technology just yet. The game starts off okay, but by the time you have all 4 options, it plays about the same speed as Gradius 3 on the Super Nintendo. If you played that version, you know what I'm talking about. Your controls become very sluggish and the game comes to a crawl. But unlike the Super Nintendo game, which runs at about a constant 10 frames per second, the PC Engine Gradius occasionally speeds back up to normal speed, usually in the most unpredictable places, and many times resulting in a death. I've played some of these sections multiple times, and where the game slows down then speeds back up isn't even consistent. It tends to happen when there are a lot of bullets or enemies on screen. Sometimes, it's better just not to kill certain enemies, just to keep the game speed at a consistent slow pace. Outside of the slowdown, there really isn't anything worse about the game compared to the original arcade version. In fact, there are many aspects that are as good or even superior to the original. Let's start with the gameplay. The game is a horizontally scrolling shooter where you take the role of the Vic Viper ship. Your goal is to destroy the Bacterian fleet that is invading the planet Gradius. You are their last hope. You'll fly through outer space stages, caves on the Bacterian planet, and even the Bacterian base. Like most shooters at the time, a single hit will kill you, and not only can you collide with bullets in enemy ships, but you can die if you collide with the ground, cave ceilings, or mountains that stand in your way. This version starts you out with 3 lives, and there are no continues. Not that you'll need them. Depending on where you die, you simply might not be able to progress due to losing your power-ups. Unlike future games in the series, all the enemy ships are non-organic. The only real exceptions are the stage with the Moai statues that are trying to kill you, a few enemies resembling Life Force-style enemies in the final few levels, and the most pathetically easy-to-beat final boss of just about any shooter ever made. What makes this game unique is the weapon power-up system. The power meter at the bottom of the screen lists all of the power-ups you can get. These are speed up, missiles, double shot, laser, options, and a front-facing shield that blocks bullets. Picking up a power-up dropped by certain colored enemies will light up the power bar starting at the speed up choice. You can either take that upgrade, or by picking up more power-ups, advance the bar to a different choice. The choices loop around, so if you accidentally pick up too many power-ups, you can still eventually get to the choice that you want. Just like the arcade, the laser weapon is available, and you can take up to 4 options. The options are glowing orbs that follow your movement. They have their own primary weapon attack, and also drop missiles. The options can also destroy enemies if they pass through one, and they absorb bullets. There are some parts of the game where you'll almost need to position the options strategically to survive. Another unique aspect for Gradius is the hitbox for your ship. Unlike most games at the time, the hitbox covers the entire horizontal length of the ship, but only a very thin vertical section along the wings and cockpit of your ship. This makes dodging bullets a lot easier, but you do need some practice to get a good handle on where the hitbox starts and stops. Just like the arcade version, one button fires whatever weapons you have, and the other button selects your power-up. The Turbografx 16 and later Core Graphics models of the PC engine included a controller with turbo switches. This is really nice when you have the regular or double shot, as you don't have to constantly tap the button for rapid fire. On the other hand, the laser weapon is far more effective if you aren't using the turbo settings, since rapidly tapping the button breaks up the continuous laser beam. A big design flaw in this game is how easy it gets with the laser. Even notes from the developer indicate the preferred weapon of this game is laser, and it passes through most solid objects and enemies, allowing you to very easily keep the screen clear. Every level in the game begins with a short section with easy-to-destroy groups of enemies, allowing you to power up your ship before the stage begins. Once you reach the end of the stage, there's a mini-boss endurance section, and then the battleship stage boss will appear. The stage boss is the same in every level, but it's the endurance match that really stands out. These endurance challenges include surviving a volcanic eruption, dodging heat-seeking bombs, or surviving an onslaught of enemy drones following a very predetermined pattern. Once you outlast this section, the giant battleship appears, and it's the same predictable fight each time, sadly. One thing I don't really like is the checkpoint system when you die. You'll die in a single hit and start back at the most recent checkpoint. You'll also lose every one of your power-ups, and you'll have to start back from square one. Depending on the checkpoint, a single death might mean a game over due to simply not having the ability to move fast enough to dodge enemy patterns with your subsequent lives. Similar to the NES version, the PC engine also utilized the Konami code. Simply pause the game and press up, up, down, down, left, right, 2, 1, and then unpause the game. It'll give you all options, the shield, and a single speed up. This only works a limited number of times during the game, so if you are going to cheat, make sure you use it where it's really necessary. All 6 stages from the arcade version are here and completely the same as the arcade. And as a bonus, the PC Engine version has an all-new stage between levels 4 and 5. This stage is the Wasteland, and shooting the giant bone creatures makes the bone fragments fly all over the screen in a scattered pattern. This means you'll need to choose between leaving them and having to navigate through very narrow corridors, or open up the level with the risk of losing a life to getting hit by the shrapnel. This stage also has unique enemies, including hordes of bone skulls shooting spiritual energy at you as the mini-boss gauntlet section. This stage feels a little out of place visually and seems more like a Gradius 2 or 3 level. Still, it's very fun and a welcome addition to the game. Had I not known that this was an extra level made for this version, I would have thought it was always part of the game. Its overall design and layout feels very similar to the rest of the game's design. The graphics are incredibly faithful to the arcade and even include a richer color palette. The only downside is that the arcade version has more layers of background scrolling. Still, the PC engine does look impressive considering that the system only has a single background layer. It's not true parallax scrolling, it's done with animated background tiles. Also missing is the sprite scaling during the ending cutscene. But still, the explosion effect in this version is 1,000 times better than what you see in the arcade. The sprites and backgrounds are one-to-one pixel matches to the arcade. This is nice since you don't lose any detail or end up with a compressed area in which to maneuver like some of the ports. But since the PC engine has a lower vertical resolution from the arcade, there's some vertical scrolling on the screen as you approach either the top or bottom, with a small part of the playfield always obscured off-screen. Just like the graphics, the sound has been given an overhaul as well. The music has gotten a huge upgrade and has that distinctive smooth sound that's common among Turbografx games. Sound effects are also crisp and clear. The effects have a lot more bass and overall richer sound compared to the arcade, especially effects like explosions. All of the music from the arcade is present in this version. This game is a classic, and despite the slowdown issue, this version is very well produced. The things I didn't like very much, like the checkpoint system and a final boss that dies in 4 shots, were all present in the arcade originally, so I can't really complain that Konami left those aspects of the game in place when they ported it. If you haven't played Gradius before, or you're looking for a good version to play, this is one of the best of the 8 and 16-bit entries. Smooth scrolling, very little sprite flicker, and the option to use turbo built into the original controllers makes this an easy to pick up and play entry. I played this game on both the real PC Engine Duo console and the Turbografx 16 Mini, and they both play identically, including the slowdown. A lot of people will complain about input lag on mini consoles, but playing it side by side, it didn't seem to have that much input lag as the original hardware. At no point while I was playing did I feel that I died due to a lag issue. I will admit I only played through the first loop and the first level of the second loop, so maybe the input lag makes more of a difference on the higher loops. I wasn't actually able to find out how many loops there are in the PC Engine version, but it would seem that there are infinite loops on the arcade, with the difficulty maxing out at 10 loops. Maybe someday I'll have to find out how many loops there really are in this version. I hope you enjoyed this review and found it informative. I highly recommend trying out this version of Gradius. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then.